Hey, what's up, everybody? It's your boy C Tez. Welcome to Real and Uncomfortable. To my far right, we have my co-host Rayven.
What's up, y'all?
But front and center, we have Congressman Jamaal Bowman. He is a representative of the 16th Congressional District of New York, and he was, considerate enough to come spend some time with us. Busy schedule. This is election season. I know that you have a lot of things going. I know we're a little bit sometimes late on putting these out, but it's actually currently Juneteenth, so
It
he's
is
been making a lot of
Juneteenth.
community moves. The election's but a couple of days away. It's getting a little bit heated, but I mean, that's not just talking about the weather either. As you can see, we're kind of sweating, perspiring over here. But I'm happy that you were able to make some time for us.
Of course, man. Absolutely. Thank you for having me. It's great to
Yeah.
be with y'all. Good to be here.
Definitely, definitely. One thing that before we really get into everything, I know that you have been making strides to kind of create a bridge of the disconnect between youth and voting.
Yeah.
We've been, if you've been paying attention, which you can't ignore it, politics has been a little bit crazy in our country, right? From the previous president to the current one, that was a heated election. All of the recent things in the news going on, but I know from the start of whether you followed from Black Lives Matter, whether you followed from current, say, trials, or you've kind of checked out in between that, the youth has been kind of moving away from the registration to vote, being more vocal online, and kind of being a little more casual. What have you? What do you find is the biggest leading cause to that disconnect?
Yeah. I mean, casual as it relates to political participation via voting, via registering to vote, via holding elected officials accountable and engaging elected officials, et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
But very active online in terms of letting their voices be heard, which is incredibly important. When we wrote the Constitution was not ratified until we also wrote the Bill of Rights. The First Amendment of the Bill of Rights is freedom of speech and freedom to peacefully assemble. And so what I see is a rise in young people exercising their freedom of speech, sharing content, commenting on content, sharing their opinions. The gift and the curse of social media is that there's a lot of information. And so the information is good when it's accurate and is harmful when it's not accurate. And so I really applaud young people using social media to raise their voices and raise their platforms. But, our political system has always been pretty broken, brother, when you think about it, right? From the genocide of the indigenous to the enslavement of the Africans to Jim Crow to the Iran-Contra scandal to, lack of women's rights, lack of LGBTQ rights. It's always been designed to maintain a white male power structure. What has changed that are social movements.
Absolutely.
Right? And so we're also in the time, while we are going through this tumultuous political moment and system, we're also in a time of social movements where you have, last decade or more, Occupy Wall Street, Black Lives Matter, and now the ceasefire movement to end the genocide in Gaza. And so what I hope is that those coalitions continue to come together and build strength, because without those movements, you can't hold elected officials accountable.
Absolutely.
And so that's why I implore everyone, but particularly young people, be a part of those social movements, but also register and exercise your right to vote. Because the people who are voting, they are exercising incredible power that people who aren't voting are not exercising.
That's it. I couldn't have said it better myself. When it comes to that, however, right, you have a group of people who, there's some really strong topics, strong opinions. And I know that you yourself have had consistent support throughout New York especially with the work that you've done fundraising, over $100 million raised on different community outreach programs, key infrastructure that has been vital to even like New York day to day. With that said, suddenly there's like a rise of contention, even like within, I guess, your own party to like how is that come about? What do you feel like is the root of that?
Yeah, well, I speak up for Palestinian rights, and unfortunately, there are very powerful special interests that don't want me to do that and don't like me doing that. And so that's what we see happening in this race. We have done, I think, really good work in the district, not just in terms of the resources we've brought in, but the way we've worked in collaboration with community-based organizations, community leaders, grassroots organizations, programs and individuals that haven't been a part of the political infrastructure. We've worked with them to bring them in, to support them, right? And so we've always done that because, our governing is about justice and it's about equity and it's about equality. And the only way to have that is you need to have everybody at the table. Everybody needs to be at the table. Everybody needs to have a voice. And so programs like 914 United, Westchester Youth Shelter, school districts in Mount Vernon, in Yonkers, and New Rochelle, we want to bring them in so they could be a part of this. And so to your point, we brought in well over $1 billion actually to support education, healthcare, mental health, housing, so many areas. But, historically, when someone speaks up for justice, and especially when that person is black and brown, male or female, there's going to be backlash. And not only have I spoken up for justice here, I speak up for justice around the world. I speak up against the genocide in Gaza. I speak up against child slave labor in the Congo. Speak up against genocide in Sudan. Speak up against Western imperialism in Haiti or Guatemala or Honduras. Because, again, if we are going to evolve as a democracy and as a human race, we have to defeat the ideology and structural racism of white supremacy. Absolutely. And so, that's just what it is. And so, there's going to be pushback, but the pushback is so crazy. We have this lobby, AIPAC and their affiliates, as a political action committee. They are spending more money in this race against me than has ever been spent in any primary race in U.S. history.
Is it about, 30 million at this point?
It's about 30 million at this point. But that tells you the power of our movement and our collective power as marginalized people.
Right.
When we harness that power and bring it together to challenge the power structure, they have to come with everything they got. And that's what they're doing right now. They're coming with everything they got because they're trying to kill our aspirational vision for the country and for the world. We want reparations. We want universal health care. We want housing as a human right. We want to deal with the issue of climate justice. We want criminal justice reform and the end of police brutality. And so many other things that are not even aspirational, but what we've earned and what our ancestors have died for, Got to talk about the ancestors on Juneteenth.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. You mentioned something. You mentioned, police brutality. You mentioned a couple of different topics that I feel like have since been, I'm not going to say pushed under the rug, but there's a lot more vocal individuals when it comes to it being in the news, right? It's easier to speak on these topics. It's easier to assemble around these topics. And some of the largest movements that have happened in recent history have been because this stuff has all been visible. Mm-hmm. What role do you feel like the optics play in all of these things?
Well, very important roles. I mean, when you see Eric Gardner choked to death in Staten Island while yelling he can't breathe, when you see it, it's devastating, right?
Visceral.
When you see Philando Castile be pulled over, and it's like, yo, like I have a legal firearm, just letting you know, and this scary ass cop just lets off with his girlfriend, I think, and baby in the
In the
back.
car.
That's savagery, When you see George Floyd, that was probably the first time the world saw a public lynching of a black man. And so that's why there were so many movements around that. But one, we have to express our anger and our rage and outrage at that. And we have to do the next thing, the next step, which is build political power. Police unions have political power.
Heavy.
They pay dues. That money is used to support their political
Good
power,
causes, yeah.
right? Other special interest groups, I mentioned APAC. There's fossil fuels. There's pharmaceutical companies.
NRA.
There's NRA. There's weapons manufacturers. They have money that they use to lobby members of Congress to do what they want them to do.
Absolutely.
And so this is not anti-police or whatever, but this is about justice.
Accountability.
Accountability, right? And this is about dismantling the system of racism in our political infrastructure. And not just anti-black racism, anti-brown racism,
Yeah,
all of it. So, yeah.
absolutely.
I have a question. So, starting your election and all that other stuff. But like when it comes to you meeting like resistance with a lot of things that you're trying to fight, like racism or whatnot, when you're elected, do you fear anything when you're trying to push for these things, push for change?
No. And just to be clear, I'm already the member of Congress, right? And I've been elected 2 terms. And so, no, I don't fear anything. I believe when you're doing the right thing and fighting for the right thing for the right reasons, you're going to get the right result. That's what history has taught us, and I actually take it as kind of my responsibility right now. Like it's my responsibility as a black man in America who is always pursuing consciousness and knowledge of self, who knows a little bit about American history, and what my ancestors did before me to even put me in position to be the first black man in history to hold this congressional seat. It's my responsibility to take the baton and fight against the 3 evils that Dr. King articulated near the end of his life: capitalism, racism, and militarism. We're still fighting those things because hyper-capitalism has created this incredible inequality that we have in our country.
Yeah.
That needs to change. Racism, we know what it is, it still exists, right? Sexism does as well, by the way. And militarism. We spend $900 billion a
Probably
year
the biggest thing.
on war. The military is the number 1 employer in our country. The the number 2 employer is jails.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But people can't get health care. But people can't get housing. Can't get child. You know what I mean? Like
Yes.
it's maintaining of the caste system, and that's why that movie Origin was so powerful, because it articulated that, right? The caste system that we're trying to maintain.
I know they were recently trying to propose a change in age for the military draft, right? Like now I think they were saying anybody, woman or male, the age of 26 and up can now be drafted.
Yeah, when it comes to that, I know that they're making a lot of moves to really bolster military force. Now, that said, to build on the military point, there has been a lot of, we'll say, funds found for these causes, right? Allocated for these causes.
Yes.
And in New York in particular, we're kind of in a housing crisis.
Not kind of.
I was trying to mix words, but we're in a housing crisis. So when it comes to things like that, and then especially let's add another, catalyst to it, the influx of like asylum seekers. Now, I will say I was kind of impressed with the way that they were kind of quickly able to find resolutions, but in the same time, this is not a new problem for New York to have housing crisis issues stemmed from, warring situations elsewhere. Where do you feel like the gap is or the stop is from finding those same resolutions for average Americans and finding those resolutions from those people touched by the effects of foreign war?
Yeah, I mean, we don't have a housing crisis because of the influx of migrants.
Right.
We have a housing crisis because we never build enough housing. It's supply and demand.
Mm-hmm.
Those who build housing, and since 2008's stock market crash, it's been more and more built by Wall Street, which again goes to the Dr. King capitalism point. You keep housing stock low, you can keep rental cost high.
Supply and demand.
And when you keep rental costs high, those who are the developers and the landlords make an incredible profit. And so this is by design. Migrants are not. There's a housing crisis.
Sure.
And so we need to build more housing. We need respectful, dignified, affordable housing. We just introduced a bill called the Fair Cost Act, which seeks to cap rental costs at 20% of one's salary. You have some situations in our district where people are paying 60, 70% of their salary
That's
towards
crazy.
rent.
Yeah.
And so New York, under people like Bloomberg and others, always wants to be a city for the wealthy and push people out.
Yes.
And so, what the narrative out there, and and I understand the emotions behind it, is migrants are coming to take from us.
Yeah, that's unfortunate.
But we ain't have much before the migrants came.
Exactly.
It wasn't like you was providing me. It's not like you had affordable housing and I had affordable housing and affordable childcare and affordable utilities, and then all of a sudden it was a migrant influx and you don't have that no more. We ain't have it to begin with.
Yeah.
And so we need to build our entire economy in a way that works for everybody. And so unfortunately, many of my colleagues in government aren't operating with the same sense of urgency around the needs of everyday people. We just gave $600 billion in tax cuts to corporations while only lifting a few 100,000 kids out of poverty. Now that sounds like a lot, but a couple of years ago, we lifted 51% of kids out of poverty. Why can't we do more there? Trump, when he was in office, gave trillions of dollars in tax cuts to the wealthiest Americans. They were supposed to create more jobs and pay higher salaries.
That I'm not gonna call it a myth, but that sounds like a myth.
They did not do that.
Yeah.
What they've been doing is buying back their stocks to jack up the value of their company so that they can continue to leverage the company against itself to build more power, both economically and politically. And so this is why we need everybody involved.
Right. I'm happy you said all of that because Rayven will tell you we got ate up in the comments when we talked about cost of living in New York. Right over there, that's our other co-host, E-Man. He probably got it the worst.
Yeah, he did.
He got it the worst when he mentioned about the cost of living in New York, the average rent being well over three grand? Yeah, 3,000 a month, and how it's saying that it's tough for people who are even making, well, I guess the average salary nationwide is probably 50,000, and
That's
saying
low.
that's like you can't really live like that in New York.
No.
But yes, thank you for sharing that.
Well, but
because-
why did you get eaten up in the comments?
Well, I guess there's a little bit of a disconnect again. Like people don't necessarily understand. So the main thing was that
You have to make
people
more than 6 figures basically to live
Yes.
comfortable in that, in that type of state. Like even me living in Connecticut, with people moving out of New York, it hiked up the prices in CT. Like they're wild.
yeah,
They're the closer you are to New York, the more we were paying New York prices.
Yeah.
And
Again, supply and demand.
yeah.
So
and
they-
people disagree with that, though?
Yeah, they're saying that why do you guys have iPhones then? You probably have on like
Are these
E-Man-
trolls?
Yeah.
Probably.
Like,
I mean, when they started talking about the color of
said
E-Man's
someone
Timbs,
said in the comments that they made what was it, like $40,000, and they have a family of
Yeah,
4 and they're
family.
living comfortable.
Where
and
they
I'm like,
live?
that's
I was
exactly
like, you
what I
gotta
wanted
be in
to
like
ask.
Arkansas, it's different places.
No disrespect to
No
Arkansas.
disrespect to Arkansas.
But yes.
But like New York City, like I mean, guys, you can kind of look this stuff up. It's all there. For whatever reasons, which I'm sure there's a myriad of so. It costs a lot to live in New York, and I know one of the things that almost made it cost more was congestion pricing. That was recently, say, put on hold. Basically, it's, I guess, a toll, another additional toll to be in New York City at a certain point in the day. As you guys know, if you take public transportation, there are some like peak rates and things of that nature. It was somewhere along the lines of that. That was kind of, again, put on hold for now. They're looking for different ways to help fund infrastructure instead, right?
Yeah,
New York, we do need to kind of make some infrastructure changes.
100%.
But you said a lot of stuff about history, and one of the things I kind of wanted to get to, because you've been very good about this, the youth, we're moved by music, and that's kind of a lot of where we put our political voice at. Back in the 90s, it was easy to be found. You had artists like Pac, you had artists like Biggie, you had people who were, Lauryn Hill, who were actively putting different causes in their music. Today, we have one of Raven's favorite artists,
Nah.
Kendrick Lamar. No, you're not a Kendrick fan?
Tess, let's say this for a different day. How about that?
But we have artists like that who are, making sure that they put those causes into the music. As we look today, we see a couple of artists coming out and endorsing different candidates. I don't know if you saw a couple weeks ago, Chef G and Sleepy Hollow, rappers from New York City, were at a Trump campaign rally. I guess, where do you feel like this disconnect is coming from? Somewhere who, like, I'm not gonna say like historically hip hop has been, I'm not gonna say primarily Democratic, but certainly somebody like Trump wouldn't have necessarily gotten the support of hip hop like that.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because I remember back in the days, rappers would reference Trump consistently in their music because he embodied wealth and power. I'm sure there was many rappers who literally was like Black Donald Trump and
Yeah.
do so and so like Trump, right? So that it's kind of always been there, and Trump is so like, hood in some ways, right? For lack of a better term, that like people gravitate towards him. Like he's anti-establishment. He carries himself like F the system, is broken, is corrupt, whatever, which it is. He also benefits from it greatly because, he's a white male. His pops gave him $1 million to start. And
A
he kept
small
flipping-
$1 million loan.
and he kept flipping it. So, yeah, there is a segment of our community, a segment of hip-hop that, are gravitating towards him. I strongly disagree with that. Just because I think for the vast majority of all people, particularly all black people, Trump is dangerous. I think he's dangerous. I think he and what he represents is dangerous. And I don't ever want us to fall into a situation where we are siding with who we think is power, who we think represents power, versus doing everything we can to build power and uplift our own
Community.
You know what I'm saying? And so, yeah, man, it's very interesting. And, you know, we be trying to push Joe Biden to like engage more and differently as well, because, and not just Biden,
But
the whole
entire
party,
yeah.
the whole party. You know, I'm very vocal with them about this because it's they need to do a lot more.
Yeah.
And you know, thank God that I'm
You're
who
doing
I
it,
am and myself, and I can just be myself, and it's all good. But we need to do a lot more to engage marginalized people. Period.
Yeah, I do think that, first off, you know, again, you said it yourself, you're like the first to hold this seat. And,
Yeah.
you know, representation does matter and it makes a difference. I'm sure that when, you know, our people in particular look at Congress and see so few, not even just that look like us, but who make an effort to engage us. There are a couple. There's yourself, was Ocasio-Cortez. She's out here. She's doing the work.
The whole squad.
Yeah. You guys have a pretty good team and you're making a lot of efforts to be visible. And to show how your policies, you know, intersect the interests of the community.
That's why they're coming after us, because they don't want. It's, you know, it's Public Enemy's third album, "Fear of a Black Planet," and not just black as black people, but black representing all marginalized people. This is their fear, and so now in Congress, for I don't want to say the first time, but we have, was it 8 of us, 9 of us, 8 women, 1 man. I'm the dude, referred to as the squad. That is, you know, we take radical positions on things because we want radical change right now. And not just for us, for the people we represent and for the country.
Yeah.
It's better for the country if we provide universal child care and paid leave and health care and jobs and invest in black businesses and entrepreneurs. Like, it's better for everybody. And we don't want to live under a caste system anymore.
Yes.
This caste system or any caste system.
There's been a lot of people who have used the word radical, but personally speaking, a lot of the issues that we see in the community on a day-to-day basis are kind of radical problems. There's a lot of things that need change that may not take the most traditional route or pace to be changed. I think people want slow creeping progress, and sweeping change rattles people. What do you say to the kind of old guard or the people who kind of subscribe to the traditional means of politics and getting things changed?
Yeah, I mean, if the traditional means or the traditional pathway means leaving the majority of Americans behind and the majority of black people behind, then we do not accept a traditional pathway. When you look at every metric, wealth, wages, healthcare, life expectancy, education outcomes, more likely to be incarcerated, more likely to be killed by police. Almost every social determinant of health. You got black people and poor people and people of color at the bottom of those metrics. And it's been like that for a long time. Now we have many of us who, you know, are doing very well economically and other ways. But we need more of us, and we need more of the country.
More people.
And so we need to do things differently, in my opinion, in order to get there. On the other side of it, when other communities or other lobbies want something, they get it today.
Yes.
They don't have to wait. There's no like, oh, wait your turn. We got to wait our turn. We're always being told.
And being cut in line.
And being cut in line. We're always being told it's not realistic.
Yeah.
Reparations is realistic for other groups historically, not realistic for us, right? As one example. And so, nah, man, with all love and due respect to all people. And then the way our federal government works, it's not even a rob Peter to pay Paul situation, meaning we don't have to take from
One group.
Italian people to give to black
give to
people.
black people.
That's not how it works, right? We can have equity because the bottom line is we are trying to build a strong economy that works for everyone, where there's better health outcomes for everyone, better economic outcomes for everyone in the country, and lower costs in areas like healthcare and jail. You invest more in people, you spend less on jail.
That's the truth.
You invest more in people, you spend less on healthcare. You invest more in people, they then reciprocate, not just with their taxes, but with the businesses they start.
Not for nothing. I know that New York is criticized as having high crime rates, but studying sociology myself, you do notice that crime is a byproduct of socioeconomic issues. It's a byproduct of individuals not having. If you steal because you don't have, you don't steal for fun. And liking that violence will come about because of it. But when there are different groups who benefit, that's what happens.
There's a prison industrial complex.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, most of the people who are incarcerated have been diagnosed with a mental health disorder, substance abuse
And they're not
disorder,
being
learning
held.
disability, or have experienced some form of trauma because of the communities they come from that are steeped in concentrated poverty and redlining over generations.
Talk about it.
And when you send manufacturing jobs overseas to use low wage or slave labor in another country to manufacture products to bring back here, you move those jobs out of places like Detroit
Yeah.
and Watts and Yonkers.
You kill those
And
communities.
you kill those jobs and you don't replace them. But you replace it with the numbers game. You replace it with heroin, the drug trade.
Yeah.
And you set these communities up for self-destruction. And then what do? You bring more police to get them locked up.
It's a never-ending cycle.
Come on now. So we in Congress, myself and the squad and many others, saying this. So the power structure is like, oh, shit,
No, it's getting rattled.
we got to do something about this. So let's spend $30 million against Jamaal Bowman, the most we've spent ever
Yeah.
in the history of any PAC, to get him out of office.
There you go. Now, outside of the negative things that get influx into the community, you're doing some positive things. And I know even tomorrow, right? Is there like an event going on?
Yes. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No. No, it's like, there we go.
Yes, I'm very excited
No,
about
please
this.
go ahead.
No, yes. So tomorrow we have a youth mobilizing event. It's a concert with Cash Cobain. It's at the Capitol Center in Portchester,
Portchester, yep.
7 p.m. We need to get about another 1,000 people signed up. So please make sure you go to my Instagram stories and just go on IG. You'll see it. Please post about it, y'all, if you don't mind. We trying to mobilize the youth. And, you know, in Congress, I started something called the Hip Hop Task Force. And it's about bridging the gap between the creative brilliance of hip hop and the artists within hip hop, the power and energy of the fans, and building political power. This concert is a way to do that. And so, you're a Cash Cobain fan, come on out. You're a Jamaal Bowman fan, come on out. We got DJ Smithy Boy. He's a high school kid from New Rochelle. He's incredible. He's going to be playing a set, and it's going to be dope. But please sign up. We need as many sign-ups as possible.
There you go. Be a part of it. Come through tomorrow. Show love.
And vote.
And vote.
Please, when you vote, especially for those who are voting for the first time, you're going to feel stronger after you cast that vote. You're going to feel stronger after you leave that voting booth. And so exercise your right to vote, feel stronger, and don't just help us win this election, help build the political power within your community through voting. So please vote before the concert. We suggest, but you could do it after as well.
Yeah. Always make sure you guys educate yourselves. I know it gets a little bit too real sometimes. It gets a little bit too uncomfortable, but hey, that's what we're here for. This has been Tez.
Hold on, I got a question.
Oh,
I
said uncomfortable.
Hey, there we go.
I got a question.
Here we go.
Voice of God.
Right.
Make sure my camera's plugged in. So I can...
Question loading.
But you know, I see your ads everywhere, man. Everywhere I turn, I see Jamaal Bowman, YouTube, everywhere. I also see the opposition, man. I see George Latimer's stuff, and they're not. You know, it's a lot of negative vibes that they're giving off. They're talking shit about you. How do you do you feel like that affects your campaign? Does that hurt you emotionally, like internally? Like, how do you feel about seeing those shit? I'm like, damn, leave that brother alone, man. Come on.
I appreciate that. I don't watch a lot of TV, and I'm not really on social like that, so I don't see them all the time. You know, to the point you just made, I think that's the critical point. They're giving mostly negative energy off. Our energy is all about joy and passion and compassion and community and love. And so our hope is like our aesthetic and our emotion shines through, right? So for every 2 or 3 or 4 ads of them you see with that negative energy, then you see us coming through like a beacon of hope or a beacon of light. That's the hope. And so that's why we shot those ads very specifically. Like, we literally called the last ad, we called people up. It was like, yo, we shooting an ad tomorrow. Can you come through and just walk with us? It was like, I got you. And it was raining early in the day. So we only had like a few people, like 20, 30 people. And then it got sunny all of a sudden, like 100-something people came out.
How important do you think those videos are for your campaign, though? Like, when you're shooting those videos, when you line them up, do you think that
Yeah.
is very beneficial?
They're very important. They're very important. It's important to counter the narrative, right? We can't just let them be out there with all the negative. Even though they're spending record amounts of money, thank God we've been able to raise funds as well so we could tell our story a little bit. So they're very beneficial. But most beneficial in winning campaigns is knocking on doors and making phone calls and talking to people directly. That's the most important thing, because you could debunk the ads and you could tell them what the truth is. You know what I mean? And thank God we got 1,000 volunteers, over 1,000 volunteers who are making tens of thousands of calls and knocking on tens of thousands of doors every day. And we've been doing that for months. And so this is all about people power. It's the many versus the money. It's people versus the power. And so we did it in 2020. You know, when we won against a 31-year incumbent, we tripled voter turnout. If we triple voter turnout again, we're going to crush it again.
All right. And when is the final election?
June 25th.
Cool.
So early voting is happening right now. So please get out and vote early. Today is Juneteenth. It's the perfect day to vote. I don't know when you're going to air this.
Oh, that's up to him.
Before the 25th.
Well, early voting's happening right now. Election day is June 25th. Please make sure you exercise your right to vote. The polls open 6 a.m. You're going to feel incredibly powerful when you go out and vote. Please vote for Jamaal Bowman, because the other guy and who he reps is trash. There's big money in politics. They literally trying to buy this seat from the people. The first time ever the people had a black voice and the voice of the people in Congress. They're trying to buy that away. We can't let that happen.
All right, everybody. So you heard it yourself. Voting is early voting is going on right now. June 25th is the actual election. Make yourself heard. Make yourself educated. This has been Real and Uncomfortable. Thank you very much, Mr. Bowman, for joining us. Appreciate you. Thanks for making the time for it. Rayven, you have anything for the people?
Go out and vote.
Go out and vote.
That's all I got to say.
Talk to you soon.
I ain't looking for no handouts. I say no. Always stay